With us now, Mark Liberman, professor of linguistics at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor, good to see you. Childcare is childcare. You have to have it. Is there something going on here of just Donald Trump's thought process, or is this the proverbial word salad?
Well, it's characteristic of the way that lots of people speak, and Donald Trump more than almost anybody else. That is, there are a lot of incomplete sentences, a lot of things broken off and started again, a lot of interpolations. Nevertheless, it's fluent in the sense that it always keeps going. He doesn't stop, and he has a point in mind. I think economists would argue, have argued, about the coherence of the point that he's trying to make, which is that the tariffs he proposes to introduce will bring in so much money that simple things like paying for childcare will be easy. I think economists generally don't agree that that's true, but that's the point that he's going on to try to make. And he continues putting the words out there.
Is there a difference between the word, do we have to be careful between labeling something word salad, lying, filibustering, and shoveling manure?
Absolutely. That is, I think what's going on here is not what's traditionally called word salad, which is like random verbiage, things that have no sense, where the words don't even connect to each other in terms of the sentence structure. They're introduced without any meaning or anything of that kind. There's also, people often raise, Donald Trump often says things that get fact-checked, that are said to be
No, that's true.
untrue.
Yeah, these are different ideas.
But things that are untrue is totally different from word salad.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's an important point. Kamala Harris, the bite we're going to play, I guess, is factually true, but has often been the dictionary definition of word salad. Take a listen.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
Is this just someone who has answers memorized and is trying to get back as quickly as they can to them?
I don't think so. If you look at the context of that clip, which I did a little bit earlier today, this was in 2022. She was in Landry Parish, Louisiana, talking about the provision of money to make internet connections in rural areas of that parish. Broadband. And she was introduced just before she says that by a student who talks about the way in which their attempt to go to distance learning during the pandemic was totally destroyed, totally ruined by the fact that most of the students didn't have reliable internet connections, and also that her attempts to do virtual dance classes were ruined. And the beginning of that clip from Kamala Harris is also omitted, where she's talking about the fact that she was speaking with a local official about the crucial aspect of time, and that one day in the life of school children matters.
And in terms of how it affects people. Okay, Professor, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Excellent points. We'll talk soon. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.